We wake up and the first thing we notice is the absence. It used to be a reliable gauge, a quiet confirmation before the day even started that the system was online and functioning exactly the way it was designed to. Now we open our eyes, look at the ceiling, and register the silence. The predictable morning response that we took for granted for 40 years simply is not there anymore. We tell ourselves it does not matter. We have emails to check, flights to catch, investments to manage, and a life that demands our immediate attention. We convince ourselves that losing that early morning predictability is just the natural cost of doing business in our 60s. We pretend that we have evolved past needing that physical validation. But deep down, sitting on the edge of the bed in the quiet of the dark, it feels like a subtle eviction notice from our own manhood. I spent my early 50s pretending I did not care that my body was changing. I was a sales executive. I spent my life negotiating heavy contracts, flying constantly between Austin and Chicago, living out of airport lounges. My entire identity was built on delivering results under pressure, and I expected my physical infrastructure to simply keep up with the demands I placed on it. When the response started getting inconsistent and those morning signs disappeared completely, I treated it like a bad financial quarter. I ignored the data, drank more coffee, and pushed harder. But what starts as a physical hesitation quickly turns into a psychological fortress. You stop trusting your equipment, so you stop putting yourself in situations where it might be tested. I created distance. I stayed up late watching television until I was absolutely sure my partner was asleep. I left for the office before she woke up. I let my pride build an invisible wall that she only interpreted as rejection. That silence and that distance cost me my first marriage. I thought I was protecting my dignity, but I was just avoiding the maintenance my body desperately needed. We hope it will just come back. We take a weekend off, sleep in, try to reduce our stress for 48 hours, and expect the engine to fire up like it did when we were 35. But hope is not a strategy for infrastructure repair. Hope does not clear out clogged lines, and it does not rebuild lost pressure. When I finally stopped hiding from my own physical reality and actually looked at what was happening, I realized my body was just a hydraulic network that I had completely neglected. If a pump fails to prime in a commercial building, you do not sit there and question your worth. You check the fluid levels, you clear the blockages, you inspect the pressure valves. I realized I had to rebuild my foundation. It was not about finding a magic pill. It was about implementing 5 non-negotiable daily commitments to manage the supply chain of my own body. The first thing I had to confront was how I treated the system overnight. For decades, I treated sleep like an inconvenience. I would run on adrenaline until midnight, crash into bed, and expect the machinery to repair itself in 5 hours. I learned the hard way that if the engine never fully cools down, the body never gets the signal to perform the deep restorative work. The morning response we miss so much is actually a byproduct of a specific cycle of rest. I started shutting down the house early. I made the bedroom cold. I forced myself to disconnect from the endless loop of work emails. I realized that if I wanted the system to fire up in the morning, I had to actually give it the quiet downtime to rebuild the pressure overnight. Then I had to look at the fluid dynamics. It sounds almost too basic to mention, but you cannot build hydraulic pressure without volume. I used to wake up, pour a massive cup of dark roast coffee, and immediately dehydrate an already depleted system. I was trying to force a dry pump to work. I changed the sequence. Before I check a single screen, before the coffee is even brewed, I drink a large glass of water. I started viewing hydration not as a fitness trend, but as the literal fluid requirement to keep the vascular lines plump and capable of expanding when the signal from the brain is sent. The third piece was forcing the blood to remember where to go. I used to think of exercise purely as a way to look good in a suit. By the time I hit 60, I had to reframe it entirely as mandatory circulation management. I live in Scottsdale now. I started walking every single morning in the Arizona heat, pushing the pace just enough to make the heart work and the lungs demand more oxygen. I added light resistance work a few times a week. I was not trying to build the muscles you see in a magazine. I was forcing blood into the extremities. I was demanding that my vascular network stay pliable, elastic, and capable of handling high pressure when called upon. The fourth shift was taking a brutally honest look at what I was putting in the tank. You cannot run complex machinery on cheap fuel and expect it to respond on command. I used to eat heavy dinners, steak, potatoes, and have a few drinks to wind down. My body was spending the entire night just trying to digest that heavy load, rather than repairing the vascular lining. I started stripping out the heavy late-night meals. I began incorporating the kind of foods that I learned actually help the body produce the chemical signals needed to relax blood vessels. I ate more leafy greens and root vegetables. I stopped eating for comfort and started eating to keep the pipes clear. But the final piece was the heaviest. You can fix the plumbing, you can clear the lines, but if the central computer is locked in panic mode, the valves will not open. Stress, unspoken shame, and the fear of failure are absolute poison to physical response. My wife Alyssa is a very direct woman. She does not let me hide in silence. She taught me that the absolute worst thing a man can do is carry the anxiety of performance entirely on his own shoulders, letting the woman he loves wonder if she is the reason things are failing. I had to learn to look her in the eye and admit when I was tired, when I was in my own head, and when things were physically shifting. Releasing that pressure valve, having that honest conversation instead of inventing excuses, did more for my physical response than anything else. When the fear of failure is removed from the room, the body finally feels safe enough to relax and respond. Rebuilding this infrastructure takes time. It did not happen for me in a week. It took months of quiet, unglamorous consistency. But slowly, the reliability returned. The morning predictability started showing up again. Not every single day like clockwork, but enough to let me know the system was still fundamentally sound. Confidence comes back when the body starts to cooperate. We stand a little taller. We stop avoiding connection. If you are past 60 and things are fading, do not sit in the dark and just hope it gets better. Hope will not clear the lines. But if you take ownership of the machinery, if you stop ignoring the maintenance, you will find there is a lot of life left in the engine. You are not broken. You just have work to do. We will keep figuring this out together. I will talk to you soon.